Hi, welcome. So in this video, we are going to look at something very interesting, the pivot table. It's really very interesting when you know how to use the pivot table. You've looked at things like count if, sum if before, and you've looked at other formulae which are able to get a summary statistic from your data. But the pivot table really takes it to another level, because with the pivot table, you can be able to do things like your exploratory data analysis, which is being able to find hidden patterns in data, being able to do your descriptive analysis, which is the what. So remember, we had a previous video where we looked at all the different types of analysis that an analyst is supposed to know. So a pivot table really comes up to help to bring all those things to life. And when we are going to go through that, you're going to see that when you master the pivot table, it really takes your analytics level to another level, and you become more efficient in whatever thing you're doing in Excel. So it's an interesting skill to master. So let's just go straight and see how to use the pivot table. So I'm just going to come here. This is last time we ended importing data. So I'll just double click here, create a new sheet, pull it this way. I'll just pull it here, and then I'll just pull it like this to this end, double click, then I call it pivot table, or let me just call it raw data, because we are going to import the data here, and then we are going to create a pivot table out of this raw data. So let me just get some data in. So I have a data set here to show you. I'm going to share this with you. So let me just click here, paste, and then increase the size so that we can even see some of the headers. And then I'm just going to do a bold here just to show you, okay, these are the titles, headers, and then let's do the double click thing. Stretch it. Let me reduce it a bit so that you can see other fields. This is the column date, so I'll just do some short date here. And then yeah, so we have let's just take it to staff code. So let's assume that this is our list of staff, and then we want to be able to know here is our staff, and this is the name of the staff, date of birth. So we want to maybe do some analysis to see how many of them are single, married, salary, things like that. So I'll just use the pivot table to show you how interesting you could take your analysis to. So here, let me say, if you remember the count if. So the count if, we used to have, let's say we wanted to count the female, for example. Remember we did this in another video, in a previous video, the count if and the sum ifs. So we wanted also to get the female. Yeah. So we could, I'll just put the female here. So we could say equals to count if, then get now the range. What is the range? The range is here, the gender, and then you go to comma, then you type what you're searching for. Remember, we've seen this in another video. You can always go back and check. Then we can also do that for the male. So we see there are 127 females, and then for the male we do the same thing, count if, then you get the range again, the gender range, go to comma, then get the male, then close it. Yeah, now we have 117 males. Then we can also just create a space here just to separate. Then we go to male here again. So for the sum if, remember we have a sum if. So remember we've done all of this in the previous video. So I'm just doing it because I want to show you how the pivot table can make this more efficient. So you have, you have several options of doing the same thing in Excel. So female here, and then it says, okay, give me the sum range. So no, actually the range is the range to take is actually the gender, because the criteria will be the female. Then the sum range is the salary. So that goes there. You see we have 798, 7.98. And then for the male now, we could make this easier just by saying, here's another option, click the female, and then pull this down like this. So we have now this from sum if. So let me show you how the pivot table could get you this kind of statistics and even more. Now, how do we create a pivot table? You create a pivot table by selecting the range of the table, your data set or your data frame or whatever selection. You select this and then you go to insert. But what is the major thing to watch out against? Before you create a table, pivot table, ensure that there is no empty column headers like this. So nothing is here. The pivot table will not be able to give a name to this column and it's going to throw an error. So because it's not able to know what is the title name of this column, it will be thinking normally this should be maybe one table, this should be another table, and then maybe this was a table. If for example you had, again remember the column headers have to be there, you had value up here, this again is one table, and then if you had value here still, this is another table here. So you just consider this like the head of a column, and then this is the value column. So this is what is going to consider. But normally this would be gender here. Normally if you wanted to create a real table, that would be gender. But I was just showing you how to use the count if and the sum ifs to get that. So now let's go here and remove this here, delete. Then now we are saying, okay, we want to create a pivot table and we are sure that there are no empty columns with no headers. Now you can now go to insert and then you click on pivot table, for example. It shows you, you see Excel has automatically selected the range for you. And how do you know that? You can still look at it here from the A1 to G245. So Excel selects a range diagonally, G245 to the right, A1 to the top left. So it selects from top left to bottom right. So A1 on the top left up there, G245 on the bottom right. That's how Excel selects a range. So you can see that there. So an easy way or way to select it so you are sure to is just to manually select. There are shortcuts like using Control Shift, but then let's just manually select this, because in the process of selecting it, we'll be able to see if there are any missing things. Maybe we missed something ended here, or just to be sure that okay, we've taken everything into consideration. And then we are here, we go back to our insert pivot. Now let me go back and show you. So if I click on here, there is the table orange. So either from a table that you've created, remember we showed you how to create tables in one of the videos before, or a range like this that you've selected, or from an external source, data source. So you can also bring in the data to a pivot table from an external data source. And then most of the times you want to use a data model, but then let's just go simple from table range. Now there's the new worksheet, which means it's going to create a new worksheet and put the pivot table there, and then maybe we are going to rename that worksheet now pivot table and work with it. Or we could decide to just put the pivot table in an existing worksheet, just maybe by its data source, or in a worksheet where we've decided to put all our pivot tables together. It just depends. Then we can determine where is the worksheet. Maybe you see here is saying you want to put it in I7. So that is what I indicated, or I could change it to any location, maybe I10 or so. So you select there, choose the location, but then we are more interested in just doing a new worksheet altogether. And then again, there's this part. If you click on it, it's going to say add data model. Add this data to the data model, and the data model is also takes your pivot table to another level, because it can help you to analyze more data with higher volumes, because it's able to go more with more rows of data than the traditional pivot table could do. And then you could add other additional calculations like unique count, unique values, how many times a value appears unique, distinct, not multiple times. So these are things that the data model can add to your analysis again, and so much more. But then let's just keep it simple. Go to new worksheet. We'll not click on this data model. We'll just click create a simple pivot table. Now we are here. Let me pull this way, and then I'm going to call this a pivot table so that we are in line, and that's fine. So now here, when you just open this up, just like all the objects in Excel, you can always click on something so that these options appear, like the pivot table field list that you see here. And if you click away from it, it's going to disappear, so you will not see the list. So to activate any object in Excel, be it charts, be it the tables, be it pivot tables like this, just click on it, and then you have all the menu up here, like what it can do, design, change data source, refresh the data, things like that. They are all here now for you to access, change the design to whatever design you want the pivot table to look like. And then there's change whether there'll be grand totals or subtotals. So these are some customizations that you can do. For now, let's just focus on what the pivot table brings at minimum as an analytical tool. So here on the right, you have the different column headers. As you can see, you have your staff code, name, date of birth, marital status, gender, salary, recruitment date. So if you go back here to the raw data, it's the same thing: staff code, name, date of birth, marital status, gender, salary, recruitment date. So it got in all your data was inside here. Now the next thing is you see here there are filters, and after these filters can help you to be able to separate your data into maybe filtering out and saying, okay, I just want gender, or I just want a certain marital status to go through. I don't want the other things to appear. So that is what gender could do for, like the filter could do for your analysis. Now, columns could be, if you look at columns are like this, and rows are like this. So for in this case, if we go here, your columns would be what you put like that, and your rows would be what you put like this on horizontally. I'm just going to show you with the example, and you understand better. And then the values are what you want to calculate. Say you wanted to calculate the sum of all the females, or the number of females, like we did with the sum if and the count if. So these are where we'll put the values. So let's just go straight and do try to do the same thing we did with count if, sum if, and more with the pivot table. So the first thing is to get something in the row. That's the first thing you will do. So in this case, we want the gender here. So now we have the female and the male. It has identified that there are two distinct genders, female and male. That's fine. Now, what is the value we want to calculate for this female and male? You pick the salary, drag it, and drop it here. And you see, it gives you, says the female. Let me just increase this so you can see better. So it gives you, it says the female 798, and if we go back here, it's the same thing. We got 798, and the male 687. So if you go here, check here, you see 687. So the pivot table was instantly able to give us the sum of the salaries per gender just with the dragging and dropping here, which is very, very interesting. That's why I said the pivot table is very powerful. And when you are able to master it, you are able to multiply your productivity so many fold in whatever thing you do with Excel. So now, another thing now is it doesn't only give sum. It just gave sum because it assumed that this figure looked like figures they could sum. So if, for example, I had taken out this sum, for example, I didn't put the salary, for example, and then instead I still just put maybe the gender or the marital status or whatever, it's going to know it's a count, because you can't sum gender or you can't sum marital status or things like that. It knows that the only thing that you can do with it is a count, and then it counts it and gives me 127 female, 117 male, And if we go back here, you see it's the same thing, 127 female, 117 male. So it's very interesting because it has given us the same summary statistic that we got from count if, and just with a single just a couple of drag and drops, and everything is in place. Very interesting. Now, if you want to see the calculations that are possible, that's when you click on this value field settings here, and then you can either see there is a sum, there is an account, average, maximum, minimum. So let's take sum here. You see you get an error because you can't sum the gender. That's why if you want to get the sum, I'll need to take out this gender, then put something like salary, and then I'm able now to get the sum. And since it's a figure, you can also count a figure easily. So I can go there, take count, and click on OK. I get the count. And then I could also go there, click, remember the formula average if. This gives you the same figure output like the average if. So pivot table, with one click, you're able to get what you would have already been writing with the average if formula. So there are times you might just need a pivot table to do the solve the problem for you, or there are times you need a formula. And then extra thing you could just do maybe right away is just select this, go to insert, recommended charts, and then maybe click on that. And now you have a chart. So the pivot table has given you a chart instantly, and you can share this chart and somebody will be able to, since we said picture is worth 1,000 words, the person will be able to just see clearly that the female are more than the male in terms of salary averages. So it's just so easy with the pivot table. So it's very interesting to know that. So let me click here and then I press delete. It's going to take away the pivot table. So it's going to take away the chart, and now we are back with our data here. So it's very interesting to know that you can get all what you used to get with your count if, sum ifs, average ifs, just by changing the values here, value settings. So I know it will take some time for you to understand maybe these interfaces like the column, the gender, the values, but just try, maybe drop here, see what comes out, drop somewhere else, see what comes out, and from there you'll be able to learn how to the right way where to put it with practice. So now there's a possibility to have like column. Let me just show you. So if I put maybe the marital status here, now you see we have even more statistics again. We could still go back to get the average, and then we go and we take the average, and then we say averagely this single female earn more. Then you have the single male have the lowest here. So you see you have now another exploratory data analysis or descriptive analysis, and still some part of exploratory to have some relationship. So it seems as if there is a relationship between the fact that the person is single and female and the salary that is being accorded to that person's average salary. So this pivot table, instantly you're able to see this, and then again you could still select this again, go to your chart, choose a chart and maybe present this. So it just depends. So you could still use this to present like a chart like this, and then we are able to see clearly that the married it's this. So it's very interesting to see that. So you can get columns like this, and then now you could also drag it and drop here, so you would still see the female first, the married, and the single. Or you could switch the positions like this. Now you first get all the married hierarchy, then you check the female, check the male, then you go to the single hierarchy, check the female, check the male, and you could also just click here to minimize, click here to minimize, or click here to maximize, click here to maximize. So it's really very interesting what you could get just by moving these things around. And then it's with practice also that you'll be able to know, when do I take this way, or when do I take this the other way, and then with time. So now we could say, okay, we want to know clearly the names of the people. So let me just go here I could put this like maybe we leave the gender there, and then we could maybe take the marital status here. We want to do some multi rows. Now we put the names here. So we could already have the different names. Say these are the female names. So Jan, you see you have all the female names first, that hierarchy. And then when the female names are over, you have all the male names. And then on this side, you have the married male, you have the single male. So you could still switch them, even though it might look longer here. And then you say, okay, the female, you have Jan, you have Adam is male. So these are, you could just play with them. And if I take the name up, you see it changes the look. If I take it like maybe here, the name here, it changes the look. So there is Jan female, April female. So it changes Adam female. Just play with it and you are able to get different insights from your data just by manipulating and moving things up and down. So let's take out the name, and then now we have this. So we could also remember that you could also format as you used to format. So like this, go to your maybe your home, go to your formatting, comma here, format as you used to, put your color or your whatever as you used to, or you copy it out like this. If you want, copy it out, paste it maybe somewhere in another sheet. Let me get it back again. Copy here, copy, then I'll just use paste special, paste it somewhere, and then now it's my new data set. So I can give it any name I want, and then I can create a chart out of this as I want. I could say maybe I don't want the totals, I don't want this. So you could take it, the summary, play with it. Now it's just like another data set where you can go to insert, go to chart, and then you create a chart of it like any normal chart, like we've seen videos with charts on. And then you start playing with the chart, add elements of the chart. Maybe I want the data, I want this, I want that, data labels, I want this, I want that. Play with it and it becomes a chart. So just from the pivot table, you have been able to get all this insight instantly, and it's really very interesting. So it helps you to get, and if you, for example, you're missing all those things, you just click here again. You have all of them at your disposal here, and then you can always drop them here. So you could decide to drop even the recruitment date. So it shows you for the 2014s. So you might see who are the high earned. So let me just take off this color, for example. And I could decide to add conditional formatting. Remember, in the previous, we've done this. So we could go here and say, okay, let's just get colors here. Then we can see clearly that 2015 had the highest average salaries, and it's from the singles. And then we see here that same 2015 from the female singles of 2015 are the ones really making the female single salaries to go up. So you can be able to use this to get your exploratory data analysis. This is information that you couldn't have seen just by looking at this data like this. But with this pivot table, we can clearly see that this is the main highest average salaries are for the single women of 2015. And then we could double click there, go inside, and then we see maybe there was a single lady, Lisa, who pulled everything ahead, pulled everything. So you can always go here, double click here, click here, and then you see the details of whatever summary statistic you have. And then you can even go into detail and do your sorting or whatever, maybe sort like this, A to Z, whatever. So it becomes again another data set for you. So the pivot table is really very interesting, and I just wanted to give you this basic so you understand. And with practice and with time, you'll be able to use this to boost your analysis very multiple times. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You learned a lot from this pivot table, and you're able to use it to build lots of interesting things. So see you next video. Wish you good data luck.